morning, everyone. Welcome to Conversations with Annassa. So before we start, I want to just say that we just lived through an eclipse on Thursday night, a solar eclipse, and this is a sort of reset. We can think of it that way. And eclipses in Vedic astrology are considered to be difficult, challenging energy. So we'll say it like that. And so if you've been having a challenging time for the last week, a lot of that can be attributed to the eclipse, to the intensity of the energies as the sun and the moon sort of compete with each other to the point of, canceling one of them out. And this is the foundation of our psychology. It's the sun and the moon and our physiology. We completely depend on the sun and the moon for our being. The sun for our being itself and the moon for our well-being. So when they interact with each other in such an intense way, our life experience gets very intensified, especially our inner experience. And where the eclipse happens the most, which is the most intensely, which is right over Eastern Europe, there tends to be some international event. So just for your information, we're sharing that, and we're going to do a meditation where we also acknowledge that we have entered the time period of the year where people tend to exit if they have completed this life. And so we want to embrace this time period with great love, a sense of equanimity for the grief that we all experience depending on our levels of sensitivity as different people leave this earth. Different people, different beings, not just human beings, but all beings as they transition. This is the time in the year between now and March when people who don't or can't experience another winter let go. And so this is all the process of life. This is not something to be denied, avoided, but to be embraced as life's process, because as in our growth happens with our capacity to recognize and face the fact that we are multidimensional. Because as we become more and more aware of our multidimensionality, which is the same as becoming much more aware of the foundation of our being in love itself, then we are ready to face death within us. But in acknowledging the period of death every year and celebrating it, there is a lot to be gained. Because in celebrating the finiteness of our being, we are able to actually live well, because our energy is not all tied up in resistance to the truth. So let's meditate and bring ourselves into the same space with the intention of letting go of everything that's not love within us. So take your attention inside. Take a deep breath into the area just below your belly button. And imagine, although this is not imaginary, you are surrounded by pranic plasma, the love of the life itself, the life force itself, inspired by love, is pranic plasma. So we breathe in that golden white light and allow it to expand throughout our body with every in-breath. And with every out-breath, we release everything that's not love. And we don't have to decide. All we have to do is bring in the white light and let go of any darkness. Life itself does the rest. So feel this white golden light expanding within you. Allow it to completely become you. Allow yourself to merge with this golden white light, because this light will teach you everything you need to know. Allow that light to touch every cell of your body, healing, cleansing, revitalizing, expanding. And as you become that white light, take your attention to your heart center. And imagine there a tiny being the size of your thumb. As you look closer, this tiny being is you, your realized self, sitting on a lotus in the center of your chest. And as you breathe the golden white light into this being, you feel it expand. And with each breath, it becomes larger until this completely realized version of yourself occupies your entire being. Allow that to happen as you breathe. Keep your attention in your heart center. Especially open the cells of your brain to allow in this beautiful golden white light, because it is our matrix of belief that must be transformed. Allow your mind to be completely flooded with golden white light. If it feels right, hold the intention to know love completely and to allow love to know you completely. This is all any human being ever wants. As you become completely established in this energetic field of golden white light, allow yourself to expand to encompass the room that you're in. And now allow it to expand to encompass the entire city where you are, so that everything within your city is within you. From this perspective, we understand there is no separation. There is, in truth, no separation energetically between us and everything else. The illusion that our bodies end at our skin is an illusion energetically. In the physical realm, it's very true. Our bodies end with our skin. In the spiritual realm, this is false. So what we are experiencing as we expand is the potential influence of our spiritual being, the sphere of influence. At the same time, this is not about spiritual power, but about merging with love itself. Gently allow yourself to come back to the size of the room. And as you look down on your own body that began this meditation, reach your hand, your ethereal hand, down and put it on your head and pour the love, the expansion into this being, meditating. As you gently re-enter your own body. And when you're ready, bring your attention back out and we'll begin our program. Welcome. We're so happy to be with you. How may we serve this morning? Yes.
May please say more about matrix of belief.
Okay, matrix of belief is what we were handed when we first arrived on the planet by our peers, elders, and the consciousness or lack of it that we were surrounded with as we discovered from those peers, elders, and other influences on us how to be in this world. And so we were handed a matrix of belief that they held as the way to engage the world. And so all of us assumed that these bigger beings around us knew more than we did, and they were our teachers, and they handed us their matrix of belief. That matrix of belief has been handed down through lineage patterns for a long time. A bigger time than we can imagine. And if you've ever played the game of telephone, where one person whispers into the next person's ear a sentence, and if that telephone line is 10 people long, the sentence that the first person says and the sentence that the last person says are very different in their meaning. So this is how distortions become lineage matrices of belief that have nothing to do with the original message of why and who we are as human beings. So if we just take that statement as a given, that our matrix of belief has become so distorted over time, and intentionally at times additional distortion has been added by various religions who step outside the boundaries of perceived reality and add distortions on top of us in the form of fear so that we are easily controllable. This has been done countless times by every single religion that exists to control people and put other people, usually powerful males, at the head of something that's unattainable by an ordinary human being. And so when we give our power to someone who we believe to be occupying a position of authority that is not something to be examined, but to be accepted and embraced, because our potential for power in another lifetime might become a reality. Every religion has done this over time. Every religion has come in to empower every human being with the truth and has been embraced, usually by one person or a group of people. It becomes a group of people from one person that tells people that they need to behave a certain way, which is a matrix of belief. And if they do that well, then they'll be rewarded in a future lifetime. This is usually the message. So all matrix of belief gets distorted in that way over time. And so it's our job to examine our matrix of belief from the context of love itself, which is the source of every living thing. Now, that love has a certain logic behind it, which is laws that are similar to the laws of gravity. They're not the laws of gravity, but we can use gravity as a sort of, the magnetism of the earth holds us to it. Well, love has its own orbital influence, we'll say. That's not exactly the right way to describe it, because love is the foundation of everything that's alive. Without love, there would be no life. And so love is a much bigger thing than sort of the romantic feeling that we have, that we call love when we come into union with another person. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking, but that's not divorced from what we're talking about either. So that's kind of a subset of love that's we can put that aside for now because that's not really relevant to our conversation. What we're talking about is the source of being itself. And that energetic source, of course, is available to every single human being because it's what we're made of. And if we focus on that and on becoming that, as we did in our meditation, then the incongruence in our matrices of belief, these incongruities begin to be exposed to us just as a natural course of our immersing ourselves in golden white light. We begin to see the truth with a capital T. And the truth is that we are all connected. Every breath that we breathe is the same air. Every pore of our skin is a portal of communication energetically. They're called nadis in Hindu religion, and every single one is a portal of energetic communication. So we are not separate in the way that we think we are, and we are separate in the way that we experience ourselves. And when we focus on that separation, then we begin to see the disharmony in our matrices of belief, and we focus on that. When we focus on love, we are focusing on our commonality. And from that focus, great change can happen because our energy coalesces into something greater that we share, which is a devotion to the truth, which is love. Our language limits our ability to perceive the giganticness of these statements because language itself is about narrowing description so that we can have some commonality of understanding. But because our brains are three-dimensional, and our language is certainly three-dimensional, it's very difficult for us to have the inner expansion to understand that we are all one. Can you imagine if humanity could actually perceive this oneness and live from it as though it's one body and each human being is a cell in that body that must be cared for with love and nurturing so that the whole can be healthy? Just imagine for a second how that perspective might change our daily reality if we really love and respect each other human being as though we are a cell in a huge organism. And that this organism actually includes the earth, because there is obviously, from that perspective, an interdependence of these organisms. And that we treat the earth as a part of ourselves because it too is founded in love. And so a lot of these meditations where we're expanding ourselves is beginning to expand our awareness as this gigantic thing that we are part of. We have no word other than thing because language cannot hold any of these concepts. But as our experience expands in meditation, and we understand that our sphere of influence expands as we are able to expand our love and participate in an ever greater world, an ever greater expansive matrix of belief that allows us to understand that we are not isolated individuals left out in the cold to die. This is not what we are. We can decide that we're that and limit our lives to that, but that doesn't change the reality of what's available, that we are part of this gigantic organism called life, and that our power lies in our understanding of this unity. And that, yes, we are love itself. And this is a very expansive experience. We are essentially life itself. And we have no greater or lesser value than any other human being. We are part of something enormous. And if we can gather our power to become that love and to unify our understanding of this unity with Source, and we can begin to expand that, then there is the potential for everything that we are connected to, every person we are connected to, every being, every animal we're connected to, everything that we connect to in nature, as we expand our experience of union, we make this available to other people by example. And because they can feel something that's different about us when they're with us, because we have this connection. And the more we cultivate this connection, the more we become it. And so what we're trying to make you aware of is the potential for changing humanity. And this is the leap into the next step of evolution for human beings, is to really understand and become completely in union with love itself. This is not an experience reserved for 1 in 3 billion people. This is our birthright as human beings. And in order to really encompass it, we have to stop being human doings for a little bit so that we can experience ourselves as human beings. And in this beingness, we can, our language is so limited. It is sinking into the depths of ourselves, but also expanding into the depth of the universe at the same time. There is no difference between the ultimate in and the ultimate out, the ultimate internal and the ultimate external experience. They are one and the same. But we talk about cultivating our inner because it gives us this connection to the depth of the love. We expand our experience of the outer so that we begin to have some experience of energetic sphere of influence. Now we say sphere of influence because it's not a personal power. It is, you notice as we meditate, we expand the power of love itself in ourselves. before we expand our sphere of influence. Anything done without that process is going to be contaminated by whatever residue of not love is left in us. So it's very important that we begin by releasing all negativity, by seeing that as contamination. Not exactly, the language is, because the word contamination itself is full of negativity. And so to even use that word sort of changes everything in a not good way. So saying that we're releasing everything that's not love is much more appropriate, because there's nothing bad about not love. It's just not love. And we really, really, really want you to cultivate the experience of acceptance of whatever arises, because in rejecting anything that arises inside of us, we are rejecting ourselves. We are rejecting love itself. And this is why the word contamination is not really appropriate. So we're just releasing what's not love. And we could talk about what's not love as immaturity. There's nothing wrong, it's just immature. And we know from our own past, our own growing as human beings, that immaturity is immaturity. It just doesn't really know the truth yet. And a lot of that has to be discovered by experience. And it is our experience that has led everyone to be on this call today, that we don't want to keep repeating the same thing. We want to know love more. We want to become love. And we acknowledge already that we can feel the difference between love and not love. And that's all we really need to make spiritual progress. And then we choose, in this situation, choose love. What does that mean? And as we grow our experience of what that is, we become more and more of it because we choose it. And it can influence every decision we make. Okay, is this food healthy for me? That's love. Okay, is this situation healthy for me? That's love. Okay, can I serve this situation? That's love. How do I serve this situation? That's love. And then however it turns out, that's experience. But there is never a reason to reject ourselves, because part of experience, part of growing, part of maturity is making mistakes. And mistakes are welcome, because that's how we learn. A lot of our learning is reactive learning. Oops, I'm in the wrong place. I made the wrong choice. Excuse me, I'm going to leave now. This happens to all of us over and over and over. But the beauty of embracing ourselves as love is that, life gives us do-overs all the time. And maturity is not doing the same thing. Immaturity is reacting in the same pattern of matrix of belief over and over again. And then we get the same experience over and over again. And then we think that that's the truth. Well, we've kind of learned this from computers. Garbage in makes garbage out. Where you start from is where you're going to end up. So if you start from love, You hold to love no matter what happens, you'll end up at love. When you get distorted, you'll end up with distortion. And so this is why meditation, clearing out everything that's not love, is really important, so that you're starting with a clean slate every day. And before you sleep at night, you clear the slate again, so that you have your night to clear even more and to be informed even more about what the truth is and the levels that really let go in you. And this growth just becomes a life of its own in you as you feed love, which is what meditation is. Meditation is nourishment into our connection with Source. Meditation is experiencing love deeper and deeper every time we do it, so that we are becoming more and more that and less distortion. Okay, this has been a long talk. Please, questions. How may we serve?
No, not a question, but a comment that says, sounds like the Native American understanding of life. And that came in pretty early in the speech, so it's
Yeah,
relating to.
we haven't really studied Native American understanding, but we're glad. And we experience that every religion, every sacred teaching that has come to the earth has come with this source information. And generally, throughout time, it's been corrupted by people who wanted power over other people, power and control, and mostly control over resources, because people who want power want control over resources, because that's the real way to control people. And so even a government system that looked pretty good, the kind of republic democracy that we had in the US until fairly recently, was pretty enlightened. At least it had the intention of giving power to the people. We welcome your feedback and questions. Please, how may we serve today? Hi, Nancy.
Hi,
So good to see you.
good to see you. So my teacher, my Sufi teacher, Hazrat Inayat Khan, gave us a prayer to say every day, which we do. And I just, since I can't ask him directly, I guess I can, but mostly I'd like to hear what you say about this certain part of it. I just love to hear an explanation. So the prayer goes, beloved Lord, Almighty God, through the rays of the sun, through the waves of the air, through the all-pervading life in space, purify and revivify us, O Lord, and we pray, heal our bodies, hearts, and souls. So my question is, through the all-pervading life in space, I don't really understand what that means.
Well, we would say the same, that's the same as the meditation we do. It's understanding ourselves as completely dependent on the all-pervading light and space and pranic plasma, which is our word for the healing energy that that light is.
So he uses the word life in space.
Life is love. They're the same.
Yeah.
They're the same. That's source energy, life, vitality, vital force. Whatever language, we get confused because the language itself is a container, but what's trying to be described cannot be contained. And so the other words around it are to help us experience this as expansive, not our personal connection to, something that's going to heal us individually. It's the breath of life that we all participate in. It's way bigger than all of humanity, way bigger, because it's vitalizing a multiverse of which we are one cell. We're a speck. We're not even, a nucleus of a cell in terms of our personal power and our individuality. And the more we reduce that individuality by lack of connection, then we do become more and more separate. But what separates us from the whole is our choices. Whenever we choose something that's not love, we are essentially rejecting love, which means we are rejecting the most important part of ourselves that can lead us to the biggest understanding of that life, which should be in capital letters, because that's the important word of the whole thing, because that life and that love are the same. That vitality, that life, that source energy that is completely creative and expansive. And we ride that wave and become an individual. And we're here for a certain amount of time, and we experience this container for that period of time. And then we go back into all that is. And that's the story. That's what we are. And the more we know it, the more we can be aware of ourselves as pure life itself, the more opportunity we have to participate in the expansive awareness of our union with love. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Thank
Yeah,
you.
that's a beautiful prayer. That's a beautiful prayer. That's our meditation that we did this morning. Reduced to, this, and without losing anything. Beautifully said. How wonderful. Yes.
So if everything's love, how can any choice not be love?
Well, you can say that. And yet that's not really our experience, is it?
Yeah.
So there's love, and then there's distortion. Distorted love. That doesn't make it not love.
So I guess it makes me, maybe that distortion is there to show you the way to undistorted love.
Contrast. Contrast is a better word than distortion, because distortion has negativity to it. So we'll go back to the word contrast. And yes, contrast is there to show us that we can make a choice that is more grounded in the love that serves the whole. We always have a choice. That's what free will is. Free will is our ability to choose in every situation what's love and what's contrast. And the contrast informs us so that we can make a better choice, a different choice the next time. Does that?
Kind of.
Yes, it's big, this question of distortion, of contrast.
So what is shadow work?
Mm.
Darkness.
Shadow work is a term that comes out of psychology. And so psychology would say that the shadow is the part of the matrix of belief that needs to be examined so that the shadow is the contrast. It's the contrasting side of the light. So the shadow is what we're releasing when we sit down to meditate, because we know that that shadow is going to show up as contrast in our experience, as immaturity. So we can say the shadow is the immature parts of ourselves that we are constantly trying to bring into the light so that we become more light and less shadow. I mean, in that imagery is, but that doesn't make shadow wrong or a reason to reject ourselves, more importantly. And this is where Christianity gets it wrong. That sin is a reason to reject ourselves. That we are born sinners and we can never be anything different. You know, that's a huge limitation, that matrix of belief. That throws a monkey wrench into the first breath. You're born wrong. That, of course, is not true. That is information to control you. We're not wrong, we're just immature. We actually need to nurture ourselves rather than reject ourselves as fundamentally not love. That's what sin, that's what that belief that we are wrong, we are born wrong, that belief causes us to reject ourselves. That's a clear demonstration of matrix of belief turned on its head, used to control people. Only one person, the Pope, can be holy. Everybody else, condemned, rejected, not capable of becoming love. And the truth is, every human being is capable of becoming love. That's the truth. That's our birthright. That is the reason to sit down and become love every single day. And in that practice of cultivating life, which is another word for love, light, which is another word for love, allowing awareness of shadow, embracing shadow and bringing it to love. This is our gift. This is how we grow into mature human beings that have capacity to hold light. Until we become the rainbow body that is pure light, pure love, in all its contrasting colors. Everything is welcome. All parts are welcome. And every time we embrace this light, we become more light. And that's what faith is. Faith is sitting down and becoming light every single day. And our experience of the gradual maturity that happens as we allow our shadow side to become more light. The experience of that process is undeniable. Anyone on this call can tell us how their life has changed since they've been embracing light. There is not a person who hasn't experienced some change from this association. And the more you are available to it and the more you practice it, the more it will become your truth. We are not separate. This is really good news, you know. Even though we're still kind of reeling with the effects of the eclipse, we can all feel the light. The light's back. You know, it got really Thursday, Friday. Now we're starting to do this. In a few weeks, we'll be like this. So, you know, the astrology is not there to harm us, but it helps if we're aware of it, because then, you know, we experience the contraction, but we don't take it so personally. That's really the only thing that knowledge of astrology gives us, is the ability to step back and say, oh my God, this feels horrible. But it's not really because of my circumstances. It feels horrible for everybody. And so we can allow that. All of humanity felt that eclipse. And because we're part of humanity, we all resonated with it. But we resonated with it according to whatever resonance was up for us. So, you know, we would say that the ideal resonance is to understand that this is something that's happening, that's making us feel a certain way, but it's not a commentary on our progress or on anything that's happening in our world, except that there is a contraction like the exhale happening in the sky. And now the inhale is beginning again of our year, the inhale of the light. And so everything that lives has a rhythm to it of life and death, in breath and out breath. These things are not different. They're just different phases of the same process. As above, so below. Everything breathes. Life in. Exhale. What's used is released. Life in. Release of what's not needed. Eat our food. Release what's not needed. experience love, release what's not love. These rhythms permeate every part of our being. And that's why we experience ourselves as both a continuity and a discontinuity, because there is continuous change. And the more we experience that continuous change, the less we feel like a continuous being, because this feeling of constant change can make us feel a little bit fragmented, especially if we haven't begun to embrace our shadow as a part of us. The more we experience ourselves as beings of love and contrast to love, the more we can come into equanimity, which is being in the center between light and shadow, acknowledging, encompassing all. And ever flowing in the breath of life. The huge inhale that takes in love, pure love. The exhale that releases everything that's not love. And we become. Ultimately, we want to merge with that state which is beyond love, peace, joy, and gratitude. And that's called allowing the love totally, without resistance. And you can be guaranteed that whatever shadow you need to work on will appear. It just does. That's part of the logic of how it works. And so there is no avoiding shadow and no need to avoid shadow. We welcome it because it informs us ever more of how we can do better. It's simple, how we can make better choices. And, we all know from experience that rigid decisions don't exactly work. There's nothing about love that's rigid. And so we can't make choices in advance, much as we would like to. We just have to deal with what is, because love is ever permeating and ever changing. But it's recognizable because it's always expansive. We all live and we all die. We all have in-breaths and we all have out-breaths. If we think of every in-breath and every out-breath as a life and death, then we know what death is and we know what life is. And it's not more complicated than that. But when it happens to us personally, it's not so easy. But spending time embracing love ultimately allows us to meet death as an exhale that's very expansive. Complete release from duality. And the experience of ourselves as non-dual beings, ultimately, which is what we aim for in every meditation. How may we serve further? So we're going to say one more thing. This is the best practice to do when we know we're dying, which is sort of every moment. Embrace love. Become love. What have we got to lose but our shadow? Practice becoming love. And we're practicing how to die. Then we don't have to live in fear because we know exactly what to do. And we practice it every single day. And the harder the moments we're given to choose love, the more mature we become. Isn't that interesting? Every person on this call can point to a different, difficult, almost unimaginable pain that life has given us that has made us a more mature person in terms of love. And the reason you're on this call is because in that moment, you chose love rather than rejecting yourself or anybody else. And in the maturity that was gained from that moment, you became available to love itself. And that's what we're doing. How may we serve further? Brenda? We love your questions.
Go ahead and speak.
There were there were two questions that were answered. Seemed like that were asked, and I was wondering if you heard them because we saw them on the screen.
How interesting. You read
Oh,
them?
wait. Oh, no. Where was love in the Michigan school shooting?
Where was love in the Michigan school shooting?
The sun. We actually have sun here today in Portland and it's shining on the screen, so I couldn't see them very well.
Where was love in the Michigan school shooting? Hmm. These things happen, and they were agreed to by all parties before they happened as part of their blueprint, as a demonstration of something for themselves and others to learn from. You could easily have asked, where's God when a child is raped? It's the same question and the same answer. These things happen to startle our awareness into contrast so that we make different choices, so that we see from others' choices what attention, what obsession people allowed into their lives instead of love. And all of these experiences just happen to reaffirm our personal commitment to knowing love and to sharing that with everyone we meet. Because that's the only solution. And by sharing love with everyone we meet, we don't mean that we give them a lecture about what love is. If you've noticed, that tends to shut people down. Sharing love means that we nurture the people we say we love in whatever way we see that it's possible to do that, until one day they come to us and say, thank you for nurturing me. I'd like to learn how to do that too. And that's when we can have a conversation. And only then. Before that, we can only nurture with everything we have in silence. And we don't try to control. We only give feedback when it's asked for, but we continually nurture with everything we have. Or if the person is not somebody that we say we love, we may not hold to that person in our lives. And when we let go of the rope, we see what happens. Some people we let go of. But only with great conscious awareness. But part of creating a loving environment for ourselves is being conscious of what energies we cultivate in that environment and which energies we allow to stay and which energies we allow to go. And every decision that we make from our highest connection to love that we can possibly get to. And so we move carefully and slowly, and only from what feels like clarity of connection. And unless we have that, we don't move. It's okay to say, I don't know. It's totally okay. And to delay making a decision until you do know. So we all have a blueprint. Each one of us, we've had this discussion a few times. And in that blueprint are certain unavoidable experiences. And depending on how much we have cultivated love in ourselves, those experiences can morph as we mature. The blueprint doesn't change, but the quality of the experiences that are brought to us, the quality of the difficulties, may change according to how much we have loved our shadow. We'll say it like that. Or how much of our shadow we have brought to love. We can say it like that too. So what was the other question?
Do you have anything to say about dementia / Alzheimer's?
Yes. We have experienced it a number of times in people around us. Rebecca has. There are certain people who do amazing inner work while demented because the mind has kept them from knowing love. And when the mind quiets, as it does in dementia, then if love has been cultivated, it just expands. And so you may know someone with dementia who just loves their life more and more, who gets happier. That does happen. If a person has not cultivated the experience of love in their life, then whatever is left that they have cultivated, that's what appears in the dementia. And so, there are people who can be unintentionally harmful, even violent, because that part of themselves was cultivated and maybe never expressed, but not dealt with with their mind, we'll say. So wherever we put our attention inside ourselves, this is what grows. No matter the state of our physiology. So we would say there are different kinds of dementia that we just demonstrated. And they have to do with what the person cultivated when their mind was working. We hope that answers your question. It's a little bit of an oversimplification, but not really. We can take it to heart that what we cultivate in ourselves is what grows. Are these the two questions you were referring to?
Yes.
Okay, we're glad to have addressed them. We are so happy to be here with you. Oh, we just looked at the time. So it looks like time to meditate some more, to reset ourselves in love. So thank you so much for participating today. What an interesting conversation. So take your attention inside. And we'll just meditate in silence as we transmit our energy. And you're welcome to receive in any way you want, with your eyes open, eyes closed, camera on, camera off. We value and welcome all. So take your attention inside, and we recommend that you inhale golden light and exhale everything else as we communicate silently. Thank you so much for being here this morning. So much love to you all. Till next week.